Hey guys, welcome back. It's your brother in Christ, Weston. Thanks for joining me today. So today's article comes out of End Times Headlines. Let's get into it. Okay guys, sorry for the lack of uploads over the past week. It's been a really busy week for me. Real life, work life, all that stuff. But let's get into it. The clock is ticking and China is preparing for war. Now, you know I've been covering this for quite some time. I've been making all kinds of warnings about war and rumors of war, nuclear war, prepping, putting something back for your family, putting something back for yourself, maybe even putting something back for somebody who is going to benefit from what you've put back, right? What is it? I already made this video once, but I'm going to make it again because it's super important and I'm going to try to trim it down because it was really long. With that said, we have been talking about NATO and the US, or just NATO in general, versus China and Russia. Back when, before Russia had ever invaded NATO or ever invaded Ukraine. And I say that because you'll look at my videos in the past and you'll see that I have been mentioning like there's going to be a two-pronged war. And I had this vision in my head where it's just like a bomb, right? A bomb without the fuse, the fuse that's lit, right? That comes down. There's no more fuse, right? It's just a bomb and you see it and it's just sparkling. And by the grace of God, it has not exploded. So why would China want to prepare for war? Why would anybody want to make a statement like that? Let's read. It says here, Chinese President Xi Jinping has announced that China will be preparing for war and that should deeply alarm all of us. Needless to say, nobody's going to be attacking China anytime soon. That just, the thought of saying that means that China, it has the upper hand. They are in a position to do what they want, right? Because they are a superpower. They're the number 2, by the way. And we're supposed to be number 1. And if number 2 is acting this way, then maybe because they're not afraid of number 1. Maybe nobody's afraid of number 1. We'll talk about that later. It says, so why would the Chinese need to prepare for war if there's zero chance that they will be attacked? Unfortunately, the answer is obvious. The only reason China would be engaged in a military conflict anytime soon is if they choose to invade Taiwan. This was red flags a long time ago. We saw this here a long time ago. The moment such an invasion is launched, the U.S. and China will be at war. The moment they go after Taiwan, it's not as hit the big red button. We're at war, right? Remove the glass from the button, hit it. We're at war. There's no waiting. There's no proxy war that we've been doing with Ukraine and Russia. We're sending missiles, we're sending troops, we're sending whatever we have left at that point. If we have anything that's even going to be able to actually fend off another superpower who hasn't been wasting resources like we have. You've heard me talk about that plenty of times. It says here, the Chinese know this, but Chinese President Xi Jinping is going ahead with preparations of war anyways. China will focus on preparing for war with the country's security increasingly unstable, uncertain. President Xi Jinping has declared Beijing will now comprehensively strengthen its military training and preparation for any war, Xi said today. This is the very first time in decades that China has been on a war footing. Not too long ago, the Chinese were our new best friends. We were doing all that we could to deepen our trade relationships with them. Now our economy is deeply, deeply dependent on goods from China. And once a military conflict erupts, that flow of goods would come to a grinding halt. So let us hope that such a war does not materialize anytime soon. Okay, let's pause. So we are already having there's a shipping crisis. There is a lack of supplies all over the place. I was reading an article the other day that Canada was having issues with like painkillers, flu medicines, medicines for children. So if you think about it, if the U.S. is so deeply dependent on another country, which we have become when we could have been independent and putting us first, right? But now we're the home of the brave, the land of the free. It's not that I'm not all for helping other people, but when you help other people to a point, I've mentioned this previously, that when you make yourself in a position to where you can't help yourself, you are now dependent on other people. And as a nation and leaders that we have that need to be responsible for millions and millions of Americans, when you do that, you're literally trading power. And if the superpowers, Russia and China, can smell that in the water, it's blood in the water kind of thing, right? They're like, oh, America is weakened and their military is weakened. This is where I've talked about big galaxy brain conspiracy. There, I'm just gonna say CT, which is conspiracy theory, right? I'm not gonna say it because this could get flagged. I have no idea. Um, and uh, and with that, it makes me feel like that's the reason why they've been drawing out the U.S. This is the reason why Russia went after Ukraine to draw. They hate the West. The West is the total polar opposite of their ideologies: communism, tyranny. I mean, literally, does anybody run to be a president in those nations? No. And if they do, I'm sure they die immediately. The Putin and Xi Jinping have stayed in power for heck long. Same thing in North Korea. Nobody's taking that over. It's like a bloodline kind of thing. And so if that's the case, then if this is how they operate and this is how they run their countries, what do you think they're going to do with somebody who's polar opposite of that and is the number one superpower? They're going to do everything they can at any given moment to take over and to shut you down, right? Just think about it. If we adopted everything that China does in the US today with Social Security, social credit scoring, cameras. Remember we said there was 440 million cameras. That was years ago for China. They probably have way more. All over the place where your name pops up, the way they treat the current up downs, right? I'm not gonna use the word that starts with an L, a four-letter word, L. Go make sure you turn the locks on your doors and make sure they are looking down. I'm just saying some random statement so you get what I'm saying. I have to speak in code here because YouTube will send me a flag of some sort, and other bigger channels can say words like that, but I can't. So the way they do that, the way they operate is they are government first, anything else, or president first, anything else second. And so it's whoever is in power gets more power and power and power. They literally have statues. I think they have a massive statue in North Korea of whatever his face is, and I think in China as well, of their presidents, like massive statues. Unreal. It's weird. But these non-democracies, these oligarchies, what is it? Oligarchies, and I think it's aristocracies. They are legitimately nuts. And so, yeah, if hey, we're so deeply dependent on China. China's waiting for us to do this so they can say, you know what, now we're going to shut down all your goods. Now you're going to feel a real hurt. Now your citizens are going to panic. We're going to cause civil war because now you can't feed your children. You can't get whatever necessary goods for computers, electronics, things that hold electricity, whatever kind of goods that are used for that, metals, certain pipes, things like that. Because literally, if I look at something that I'm probably having here, probably a million things that say made in China if I turn it over. So that's this is real bad. So let's continue. Sadly, it's becoming exceedingly clear that Chinese President Xi Jinping is strongly considering the option of reuniting with Taiwan by force. There you go, by force, not an agreement, just by force. Xi's announcement, China will focus on preparing for what will raise fears that the nation may invade the self-governing island of Taiwan, which Beijing claims as its own. China will be the second largest economy. It has the second largest economy and military in the world. It has repeatedly threatened to annex Taiwan by force if necessary. A lot of people out there seem to assume that a conflict with China is not an imminent threat. This is exactly what we do here. I've said this. I'm not going to say I've mentioned this so many times because I have. The West puts you in a bubble. We just feel so comfortable in this bubble that if this bubble's not being touched and everything else out there is exploding, it doesn't matter because nobody's going to touch this bubble because we're big daddy superpower, the West. We have guns, the X, Y, and Z. Everybody's got a gun here. And when you think about all the things that we have, you can see why other nations are either jealous or they want to take you down because you are a threat. Because they can sit there and go, okay, we can estimate by the military power that the U.S. has, China, Russia, whomever, by doing an evaluation. But what we can't do is realize how many people in their nation are armed with weapons to defend themselves. And so this is very, very important. So then you realize you invade and you're outnumbered like millions upon millions upon millions. And multiply that by like 2 or 3, 4, 5, or 6 million per person of guns and weapons and armory and things that we have just individually that I could have access to. There could be millions of me, right? Just 1 million. And then each of me could have like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 guns, right? Then that's 8 million guns, or however, take times that, whatever the math is. So let's continue. But just last month, the top-ranking officer in the U.S. Navy warned that it could come soon as this year. Last month, the U.S. Chief Naval Operations Admiral Michael Gilday warned that China could take Washington and the world by storm and invade Taiwan this year. Amid the military exercises by air and sea of Taiwan's coast, Admiral Gilday said it's not just what Jinping says, it's how the Chinese behave and what they do. What we've seen over the past 20 years is that they have delivered on every promise they've made earlier than they said they were going to deliver on. That's concerning. Personally, I don't think we'll see a war between the U.S. and China in 2022. That's crazy just to say that you don't think, but 2023 is a very real possibility. It turns out many officials in Japan also see the need to prepare for coming conflict with China as well. When you have nations that are not China, or that are not the U.S., and they're China, and they're Japan, and then they're Beijing, and then they're Taiwan, and then they're Ukraine, and the surrounding nations, and people keep saying we have to prepare for war, it's almost like somebody's pushing the war button. War is going to happen. So the more you talk about it, this isn't like high school where it's like, okay, the more we talk about it, it's going to happen. No, it's like, it's going to happen. We're just preparing for it, right? We're just waiting for somebody to pull the trigger on something, but it's already happening. Russia's already started. And so it's just following suit. Once that happens, we're like, everybody is in a war mentality. We have been in a war for the past 9 months. This is true. North Korea has test fired, tensions that just continue to intensify. If China were to attack Taiwan, it would just have to face a hostile superpower. It would also likely have to confront its long-standing regional rival, Japan. For centuries, Japan and China have vied for hegemony in the East Asia at times. They have threatened each other with survival. Today, as I found 3 days of meetings with Japanese officials, analysts in Tokyo, the threat of Chinese aggression is producing quite revolution in Japanese statecraft and pushing the nation to get ready to fight. Tensions just continue to intensify month after month, as I've discussed in my brand new book. Eventually, a breaking point will be reached. Meanwhile, North Korea and South Korea are getting real closer to war, so there's even more. Recent days, North Korea has test fired over 30 missiles and includes ICBMs, which are prompted an evacuation alert over northern Japan. The North has test fired more than 30 missiles this week, including an intercontinental ballistic missile Thursday, which triggered an evacuation alert in northern Japan. A response from an area military exercise between South Korea and the U.S. Of course, North Korea has test-fired lots of missiles before, but in this case, North Koreans have actually admitted that they are just conducting simulated strikes on South Korea. And there's more to talk about here, but all that to say, North Korea just saying, we really are doing test fires against South Korea. Like, you are the target. China's saying, well, we've made, the U.S. Admiral Gilday says that China has delivered on every promise for 20 years. So when they say they're going to do it, our intel leads us to believe they're going to do it. Okay. Then you have Russia and Ukraine. You have, it just draws in everybody at that point, because if the U.S. goes to help Taiwan, that means all of NATO's coming as well, because they're in a pact, right? So if one attacks, they all attack. That's exactly how this works. So prepare yourself. I know people are just sitting there like, when it happens, it'll happen. Don't be that person. Do something. I'm not trying to scare you or fearmonger you. What I'm saying is that you are not promised your next breath. You are not promised today, this next minute. It's early in the morning and I'm making a video. And something drastic could happen right now. I'm not promised. You need to know Christ. You need to know what's going on. You need to know Bible prophecy. You need to see the red flags for what they are. That was months ago. Praying that somebody will see these videos that saw months ago and saying, man, this person was right. Not because I want to be right, because hopefully they'll see that and they'll go, this video, this video, this video, this video, this video, all these things will line up and go, wow, this person, how did he know this? It's because he knows Christ and he knows Bible prophecy. And so if that's coming along, hopefully it's an unbeliever and they'll go, I'm going to give my life to Christ. All these videos I'm making are around the importance of knowing Christ, hopefully getting you in your word, paying attention to what's going on, preparing for yourself with whatever you can, and leaving the rest to the Lord, obviously. And everything's going to be in the Lord's hand anyways, because it's all his word coming to pass, and he will simulate the events that need to happen for the second coming, for the rapture, for the Antichrist, everything. So anyways, guys, that's the video. Let me know what y'all think, and I'll see you in the next one.